Hi, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for coming along to our Tide Legacy Learning event this afternoon. I'm just going to go through a few little pieces of housekeeping just to explain how the event's going to go this afternoon. So we're going to have a quite traditional kind of webinar format to today's session. So none of you will appear on screen or will be able to interact with us through either your video or your microphone button. So the best way to interact with us today would be through the chat box function. So if you see the chat icon at the bottom of the screen, if you just click on there, you can put any comments or questions in the chat box at any time throughout today's session. We will have a live panel session in the second half of today's event, so we would really encourage you to think about, as you're hearing from the different participants today, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask them during that time, to either pop them in the chat box in the lead up to the session, or when we actually get to the quick Q&A session of the panel, then I'll just ask you, and if you can just pop your questions in the box, then that would be fantastic. We'll also have a break halfway through this afternoon's event as well for about 10 minutes or so, and that'll just give everyone a chance to stretch your legs, get any refreshments, or just attend to anything that you need to do at that time. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Amanda McCarran and I am the Head of Development for Tide, but I'm also the National Lead for Tide in Scotland, and I was the first member of staff to be recruited in Scotland just over 4 years ago when we got our funding from Life Changes Trust to start establishing the network in Scotland. And today's event really coincides with that because we are coming to the end of our funding with the Life Changes Trust, and we've also just completed our external evaluation of the work that we have achieved with the network in Scotland over the last 4 years. And today's event is really about looking back, reflecting and sharing our learning with you around about not only what we've achieved and what we've been able to do with Tide in Scotland, but also the kind of process and how that has gone over the 4 years, and some of the key learning from staff's point of view as well, which might be helpful in the roles that you are doing at the moment, or if you're thinking about doing a similar type of model of involving people in the future. We hope that today will be really helpful for you there. I just wanted to start off by reflecting on my own learning. As I said, I was one of the first members of staff to be here in Scotland, and it was an exciting time. It was very daunting, and it was very challenging as well because Tide didn't exist in Scotland, and so we had to start from scratch and build up the network and build up our membership base. And I wanted to just talk about a few of the things that I've learned over that time, which might be helpful. And I think the first things to think about, and the first things that we really learned, is about when you're going to involve people in a meaningful way and really have them be a key part of what you do. It's really important to invest time in that. You can't expect people to just turn up and be involved straight away and start talking about really intimate and really emotional parts of their experience and their journeys through their caring role without giving them that time to get to there. You've also got to build up a level of trust with the person as well. And the key point of that has been our relationships that we've built in Scotland, and that has been with our carer members, but it's also been with other organisations and partners who have really supported and championed Tide in Scotland and helped us to grow our profile, to get the word out about us, and to really help us connect with other carers that were out there in Scotland. So the time, the trust and the relationships were really the kind of foundation in which we started to build the network and establish Tide in Scotland. And I think another really key point, which is really important, which I always advocated from the very beginning, was that you have to allow the people that come into the network to be honest and tell the truth about their experiences and what's happened to them. And I think that was really solidified for me within the first few months and the first couple of carers that we started to get involved with. And we asked them to come along to do some work with Tide. And the first question that either of them asked me was, is there anything that Tide don't want us to say? And that really struck me and said a lot about their previous experiences. And I think it's really important to give people a safe space and encourage them to be honest and open about their experience, because that's the only way you get a real change and you can influence a real change. It did meet with some challenges from other people when we did that, and there was times where it was really tough to try and keep that going and to advocate that we wanted to make sure that the voices that were being heard were being honest and truthful. And we did get some really great responses after people really kind of embraced that, and it was enabling our carers to really make that sustainable change, which we'll talk about throughout today's session. It also means that it makes it meaningful, so it's not just tokenistic, that you are engaging with people with lived experience. And it means also that you have to be considering the fact that you cannot deliver that in bulk. You can't do that at scale. You have to take some time and build that up, and that's about building that trust and building those relationships. And that's what we've built up steadily over the 4 years. And there's been lots of learning for us as we've done that and as we've gone along. And we've really just listened to the carers and what they wanted, what they experienced, and what was important for them. And people were coming to us at all different parts of their journey. So we had some carers who hadn't had a diagnosis of dementia yet, some carers who were halfway through their journey, some people who were coming towards the end of their journey. And really importantly for us, we also embraced former carers who had finished their journey of caring, and we gave them somewhere to come and somewhere to be and somewhere to use that experience in a really powerful way. We created flexibility, choice and diversity, and that's really key as well. It's about giving people as much opportunity and as many different options as possible to have their voice heard, because they are individuals and they all have different experiences and they will all flourish in different ways. So in order for us to ensure they reach their real potential, it was to give them as much choice and diversity as possible. And that means that's underpinned then hopefully by an authenticity and also by a commitment to them and their individual needs and their individual outcomes. And that was one of the key things again about our network, was that we recognised carers as individuals in their own right, and we really embraced what they could bring to us and what they could bring to the table. And finally, over the last 18 months, what we've really learned in a very quick way, in a very stark way, is that there are 3 powerful things that you can do for people with lived experience. And I would really advise anyone who's out there working with people with lived experience or who will work with people with lived experience in the future, is that you will often hear really painful and really emotional stories, and your natural reaction will be that you want to try and fix that. But the truth of the matter is you can't fix it. You can't take pain away. You can't take the emotion out of what they're experiencing. And in our case, we can't fix dementia. That would have been the one thing that would have made the biggest difference. And a lot of the time you then struggle to know, what can I do? How can I help someone? And the 3 things that you can do, which don't cost any money at all, is first of all to recognise that person, recognise their experience, recognise what they're doing, acknowledge them. And that's the one thing that carers always tell us still hurts them the most, is the fact that the system and society in general still sees them very much as that invisible majority. They're still there, holding up the system, contributing, making sure that everyone is well looked after, and doing that with huge impact on their own physical and psychological health, and no one acknowledges it. So if you acknowledge them, if you acknowledge what they are doing, what they've been through and what they're contributing, that is extremely powerful. And the last thing is to validate them. So if you validate their experience, what they're feeling, if you can tell them that it's normal, that it's okay, and that it's worth something, then that can be a really powerful thing. And it can have such a huge impact on someone that you might not even really recognise it yourself, but that will stay with that person, and that will really help them in the future. So those are the 3 most powerful things that I think we can do, and the things that we've learned over the last 4 years. And finally, I just wanted to touch on our 3 outcomes that we kind of set off with at the very beginning 4 years ago to try and achieve in Scotland with Tide. And that was to, first of all, connect carers. That was one of our main outcomes, was to bring people together in a network, connect them with other people who were the same as them, who experienced the same issues and experienced the same feelings, and give them that vital peer support. It was also to connect them with organisations and partners that we worked with, and connect them into opportunities and different platforms on which to have their voices heard. The second thing we wanted to do was to invest in carers. and not only just invest in them in terms of financially, so providing them with support and training to reawaken skills that they had lost, to find new skills and to give them confidence to go on and influence in whatever way they chose. But it was also that investment of time and trust and relationships. And finally, the last outcome that we had was about influencing. And that's something that we've done really well, I think, over the last 4 years and had some great successes at. And that might be influencing each other. So from carer to carer in a peer-to-peer capacity, it might be influencing at a local level, but it can also be influencing at a national level. And we've had some really great stories over the last 4 years where carers have been able to do that and really make that sustainable change. So that's kind of the foundation on which we built the network in Scotland, and that's how we got to where we are today. And that's just some of my own kind of personal reflections and learning, having been here. And it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to lead the team in Scotland and be here alongside all of our carers over the last 4 years. And it's such a joy to witness and see carers when they come on board and then they start to blossom and flourish and really grow in confidence and in stature, and also see the kind of changes and impact that they can really make. So I'm going to introduce our first carer today, who is Alison. And we're going to show you a short animation that Alison helped us to create, which is based upon her case study, which features in our external evaluation. And it's really hopefully going to give you an insight into a little bit of Alison's journey with Tide, where she came from and how she's travelled through over the last 4 years that she's been with Tide. And it also focuses a little bit upon a really kind of key area that Alison wanted to talk about and wanted to raise awareness, which was round about employment and caring. And it just gives you an idea about some of the ways that our carers have influenced on areas that are important to them. So we're going to play Alison's animation now. So I just wanted to say thank you to Alison again for being part of that process and helping us to create that animation. Unfortunately, Alison can't be with us live today for this event, but she wanted me to pass on how grateful she was to be able to show this to you today. And again, hopefully it's given you an indication and an example of where carers have come onto the network and have kind of, you know, been part of our development programme, been part of our family on the network, and really started to grow and develop. And Alison's really been able to look at areas that she was passionate about, and employment was one of those. And not only did she help us to do this animation, but she also has gone on in the past to speak at various events, including one with the STUC, where she spoke really eloquently and with lots of confidence about how her caring role had impacted her employment. And that was to union representatives who are then going to be going back out into the workplace and working with and connecting with people who may have been struggling with their caring role and employment at the same time. So it was really a great way and a great example of how Alison was able to influence in an area that she was passionate about. I'm now going to move on to introducing a film that we've done with some of our staff members from Tide. So when we started the network 4 years ago, when I spoke earlier on about having that time and that trust, we really needed staff members to support that. And so we have what we call carer involvement leads, and those are our staff members who have the most contact with our carer members on a day-to-day basis, and really provide that care and support whenever they first join the network, sometimes even before they join the network, and right the way through. And so 3 of them have appeared in this film that we're about to introduce to you, and that is Ray, Linda and Louise, and they're going to reflect back on some of their experiences as a staff member and some of the things that they've learned over their time working with Tide. And so here's their video.
Yeah, the main achievements for me, it's really difficult to choose one in particular, but I think getting to know our members and building true relationships through our trust, our mutual trust, and really listening to the members and what they've got to say, listening to their voices, and that means really hearing them and listening to concerns. But that also included identifying what our members' needs were on a personal level and not a group level. So we were able to identify what type of support each person was looking for, if you like. And then we just proceeded to go ahead and create what was needed, or we signposted them to other relevant services that we already knew about. For example, there was a niche market out there for carers, male carers who weren't being supported in a male group. So we really heard the male voices and we created that safe space for them.
For me, it's been about creating a kind of calm, safe space to allow the carers to connect. And the last year obviously has been quite a different atmosphere of, you know, not being able to get together in person. But I think developing the various online groups, events and social interactions that we've had, I feel that, you know, that's really put Tide on the map, really, in terms of bringing people in, bringing people together, and, you know, the ultimate of connecting the carers together. So there's all those aspects. And I think as well, you know, the carer development programme, the various modules in particular, thinking about getting your point across, where you can see that carers kind of come in looking for some support direction, whatever it might be, and the carer development programme has very much been there. So for me, I think it's that social and getting together, finding niche groups within the community you're part of, and then also the development programme.
I would say, well, as a team within Tide, we've achieved so much together. But personally for me, I feel that it's been a real privilege to have been involved in the delivering of our coffee mornings, which has been via Zoom. and also setting up and facilitating our theme focus groups. Carers have told us about what they thought would be a benefit to them. And from that, we've listened and we've actively listened to them. And then as a team, we've then tailored our groups basically to what the carers have asked for. And also I'd say a real achievement is being able to participate in the delivery of our carer development programme.
Just like everybody else, adjusting to the regulations and the rules set out during the pandemic. We managed to adapt into a virtual world, if you like, and this included me starting in a new role during the pandemic. Many of us haven't met each other face to face as colleagues, and certainly not met any of our members. But what I've learned from that is much easier to learn from each other in a new role if you're sitting at a desk next to someone. But the virtual thing worked very well, and we built relationships through using Zoom or Teams. It made networking quite difficult. And it was even more difficult because other organisations were forced to close and therefore services were reduced. So it took a lot of research, finding out who we were trying to network with, so that we could provide the support to our carer members as they were coming along asking for support. So yeah, I think that was one of the difficulties for me, was joining a new team and a new business, and not meeting anybody face to face. But you know, the virtual world really helped, and it was successful, and long may that continue.
Probably one I would highlight on is a kind of practical challenge that we had, which was the kind of technical world of using online virtual meetings, which many of our carers had never used before. And it was about recognising that although that was a challenge, that there were ways that we could work with people, so providing them with support guides, carrying out one-to-one kind of sessions with people, helping them to be familiar with, for example, the Zoom platform. And I guess if you kind of cast ahead to where we are now, you know, all of our regular attendees are really very familiar with online and virtual meetings. They encourage others to have a go and try. And I think the kind of nice add-on to that is, you know, quite a number of members are now talking about other aspects of their caring role that they need to use virtual interactions for. So for example, NHS, they've used a lot of virtual meetings as ways of, you know, having interactions with patients and carers. And so they've been able to enter into those with comfort because they've become familiar with it through some of the stuff that they've done with Tide. So yeah, I guess it's supported some people kind of getting over that hurdle and not being too intimidated by technology.
I've only been with Tide for a year, so on joining Tide, everything's been online. So I guess the biggest challenge I would say would have been COVID-19 and identifying ways to reach out to external organisations to be able to make links with them in order to raise the profile of our carers, and also to reach as many carers as possible was made that little bit more challenging.
I think you've got to listen to carers, and I don't mean hear them, I mean really, really listen. I think it's really important not to put carers into pre-prepared boxes with titles. Each carer is very unique, and this should always be acknowledged and validated, always. One of Tide's unique qualities are that all of our staff have lived experience. And what I noticed was that because of that lived experience, it creates an absolute truth and empathy and a really deep understanding. And that gives people confidence to open up and tell their truth without the fear of being judged or anything like that. So the other thing I want to say about Tide and our carers, and MDLs at Stanton Group says, former carers are so vitally important. They have got so much to bring to the table. They will always support people coming behind them, always. But the good thing about Tide, when they're here with us, we support them following their caring role ending. So MD starting up a group should take that into consideration as well. They're totally invaluable and they just bring so much, and it's so important that they are supported when their caring role has finished as well. So to summarise that up is, don't hear, listen and act, validate people, give them that safe space, give them the confidence to tell the truth, no matter what that truth is, and be respectful. And don't end the journey for a carer when their caring role ends. Support that, because they will support others coming along and help any support group going forward to grow.
You know, I would say that we recognise often that when carers become involved with us, they have in some way reached metaphorically a crossroads or some sort of brick wall, that, you know, the responsibility of their caring role has just reached a point where they are, you know, exhausted or really in need of support of some kind. And I think in terms of engaging with them and involving with them in things, it's first and foremost, I mentioned earlier, it's about us offering that safe space to share or offload or just listen. You know, I've seen many of our new members come along, and for the first few times they're with us, they just observe in a coffee morning or a focus group. And what's beginning to happen is that they're beginning to recognise and realise that they're not alone. There are others who are in the very same situation as them, with the same feelings, emotions, worries, concerns, whatever it might be. And so I think that's really important, is that, you know, it's to let that phase happen. And then, you know, it's really the first step in them moving forward in their caring role, because gaining the confidence of seeing and hearing what others are experiencing and are doing lets them feel more confident to then take further steps, you know. So I think it's about being aware of letting them get landed, familiarized, comfortable, and then looking at, well, how could they be involved, or how could they take steps for themselves? You know, for us, it would be, are there any elements in the carer development programme that would be really helpful for this particular carer in their own circumstances, you know? So I think for me, that's an important aspect.
I feel the things that are important when engaging and involving carers is to allow carers to feel that they are equal partners in care and that they have an equal seat at the table. And I believe if we get the simple things right, such as being able to invest by giving our time and being able to listen to carers, we'll also be able to acknowledge that carers are expert in their caring role.
When they decide to take to the next step, to go to the next level, it kind of happens naturally. You can just tell when they're ready. But what we've done during coffee mornings or sessions is gave them the confidence to take that step forward. So we will maybe have a one-to-one with that person to talk about how and what they would like to do to go to a different level. That might be more than one session, which they get lots out of, but so do we, because we learn who they are as people as well. So that's really good. And once they've decided where they want to go or what they want to do, then other members or other staff members will become involved and there'll be further talk, but we'll also learn them how to do talking, how to take breaths, how not to go over stress or anxiety. So they're well supported in every area. And if they need to know anything about topics, then we'll find that out for them as well. If they want to not appear on screen, they might write a talk and one of us or somebody else will deliver that on their behalf. But the point is they're getting their message across, or they're supporting something that they really believe in, that they want to be taken further. So many areas they're supported, and whatever they ask for, we will really try to deliver that and support them whatever they need.
A recent webinar that we hosted for family and friends carers around delirium, dementia and depression, the 3 Ds as it's called. And one of our carers was approached to share part of what she had experienced through her husband, who'd had early onset dementia. And so to get to the point of the event, we obviously had to start that conversation with her about how she might put that story together, and working that to a point where when she was reading it back again, that she was comfortable that it did reflect how she felt, what she'd experienced, and covered everything that she wanted it to share with other people. We then obviously talked with her about the type of event. There might be 100 people there, it was online, and how she might feel about it being involved in that event. So we had a number of, I guess what you would say, strategies with her. So we decided that we would record the event in advance, her part of it, the bit that she would be sharing with the participants. So she knew as a backup, if on the day she didn't feel up to it, or anything had happened, that her story could still be told. In preparing, we had some catch-ups with her, one-to-one. I kind of talked to her a little bit about the type of audience that we would be talking with. She provided me with a paper copy, so I had the written words. And as we got closer to the event, we kept checking. She was keen that she did actually say the words herself. And so even up to the day before, I was checking with her, and that was in the knowledge that if at any point she felt, because sometimes sharing your story can make you feel very emotional, unexpectedly so. But she knew that if she did feel like that, we had a signal, and I would simply carry on reading the story. And then it flows right the way through to afterwards having a chat with her about how she was feeling. And the day after, she was quite washed out. She found it quite draining. However, if we go back to the event itself, the response through the chat space on that webinar from all the family and friends carers about her willingness to openly share her lived experience, it was really emotional for her, for them. And the end conclusion was that she'd appreciated the contact and support, but actually valued the chance to share, and it had, from her perspective, gone well, and she understood the value that the carers attending had felt in her telling her story and her take on her husband's experience.
I would say the kind of support that I've been involved in is, as I say, as well as listening when we're at the coffee mornings, etc., and hearing what carers are looking for, and then identifying whether they need to be signposted on, and just giving them a support of knowing where they can turn to get the information. We might not have all the answers to what they're looking for, but it's being able to maybe signpost them to the experts in that field that can give them the information that they need. And also I was involved with carers going on to a lot of our webinars and writing their story for our newsletter. So again, to capture that lived experience, I think we've got to realise and recognise that it can be a real emotional process for the carers to go through. So supporting them before the event, during it, and after the event is really, really important. And the sort of things that we've done previously is by having the meeting prior to the event, talking it through with them, giving them exactly what the format is for the day so that they know nothing comes as a surprise to them. And then also that opportunity that they can have like a dry run and running through what they're going to say on the day as well. And again, I think most important is to be able to follow that up. So again, being involved in post events where we're contacting carers and just giving them that space and time again, and just to talk about what it felt like for them going through that. And many carers have said it's been like a cathartic experience for them, just being able to write their story down in paper and then speak it aloud. So yeah, it's been an absolute privilege to be part of that.
The risks are that the honesty and the understanding would be lost, it'd be gone. Your uniqueness, Tide's uniqueness, would just disappear, along with the deep understanding and the trust that we've given and that they've given to us. Would we really still be listening and validating at the same level? Because I don't think so. It would make our profile much harder to grow, but also it would make the carers' journey much harder to grow if they wanted to participate at a different level as their confidence grew. For instance, campaigning or taking part in a seminar or delivering a session. So I feel it would be risky, and all of what we've gained and all we've done would just go because there'd be no integrity there.
I think organisationally, you know, in terms of how you want to involve people within your own organisation, if you don't take these approaches, then you won't end up with the kind of relationship with the carer that you can work well with them for your, you know, the further progression of things that you might want them to be involved with you in. So yeah, it just would make things more challenging, I think.
Well, again, as I say, I think if we fail to listen to carers, again, it's going to be that they won't engage in any work processes.
I would just say, do it. What are you holding back for? You have got everything to gain. Carers are experts by experience. Get them on board, learn from them and let them learn from you. It's a win-win situation. Don't hold back, just do it.
I think I would really emphasise the need to not go straight to that full engagement level, is to look at ways in which your organisation can bring people in, let them become familiar and build a level of sort of engagement with the organisation first. And that landing space we talked about, that safe space. And even if, you know, your longer term plan or desires are to get really active involvement, that will come. Just, you know, I think, you know, there will always be people who will be activists and will be first at the door to get in and be part and be involved in something. But actually, if you want to be truly representative as an organisation, you need a whole range of people to be involved. And actually, some of those folks just need a little bit more support, coaxing and encouragement to become involved. So remember, create the safe landing space, bring them into that, and then through time, you'll get the ultimate engagement and involvement from the full range of carers who are out there.
My advice would be, first and foremost, never underestimate the value of involving people with lived experience. It is so powerful to hear it coming from the carers themselves. Just makes that story so powerful. Each carer's lived experience brings its own richness, and allowing us to see and appreciate what their caring role looks like. And although all our members within Tide have either cared for someone or been in a caring role just now, they're all unique and they're all amazing in their own right.
So thank you to our three staff members, Ray, Louise and Linda, for giving us that real insight into their own learning and their own kind of journey through working with our carer members, and hopefully there'll be some of what they've spoken about and will be useful for yourselves in the roles that you're doing or things that you might want to do in the future. Okay, we're going to move on now to our second carer film, and we're going to play this one just before we'll have a short break after this film. And this film features one of our carer members, Jennifer, and it's actually a really quite unique story for Jennifer because she first came along to Tide as a carer, but she also works in a professional capacity, and this is her story about how she has found a real benefit from being part of the Tide network, both in a professional and a personal capacity. So here's Jennifer's film.
I'm Jennifer Campbell and I'm the Carer Services Development Officer with NHS Highland. My role involves ensuring that unpaid carers are at the focus of what we do within NHS Highland. I think in the first instance it was professionally. I'd heard of Tide through connecting carers, so I knew that they were there to support carers who were supporting people with dementia. I'm in that position myself. My dad has dementia. It was quite useful to look at it from a professional and a personal kind of point of view. I think it's been really important for me to have these connections personally because sometimes it's really difficult to kind of unravel the professional and the personal side of caring. And as a professional, there's almost that bit about you think you know everything and you can do it yourself. But actually, Tide have actually been really supportive and reassuring to me. And when things have been difficult, there's been somebody there to just pick up the phone and have a chat to. So some of the activities that I've been involved in have included the weekly coffee mornings, so just linking in and having a chat. And normally there's a few people there, not always the same people, but just really good to hear from other people what their personal circumstances are. I also got involved in a session called You Can't Pour From an Empty Cup, which was around looking at how you support your own well-being. So that was a really good session and certainly has helped me to really just put things into context. For me, with my professional hat on, to be able to give knowledge and understanding around the carers legislation, I have a lot of understanding of that, and to be able to see what's out there and what other organisations are there to help carers was really beneficial. But also that that kind of ability to hear what other people are saying, and sometimes if people are struggling, if I'm able to just offer some advice, I feel that has been really valuable. From a work perspective, it's always really good to hear from other carers what's going on. So that's allowed me to develop the Highland Carers strategy in a much more concise way. So really listening to what's going on and ensuring that's applied to what we're doing here in the Highlands. Another part of my role is that I'm a practice educator. So I have social work students that I work with, and once I had got to know about the role of Tide, I then linked in my most recent student to do some work with Tide. And that has been really valuable, not only to her as a student, but also to particularly one family that she has been working with. And she was able then to link a carer into the services of Tide. I think in the true sense of the carers legislation, which talks about collaboration, it's important that we work with as many people as possible. So developing knowledge and expertise, we don't all individually know everything, so linking in with others that have that expertise, and in Tide's capacity, that specific link with dementia and carers is very important. I don't think that all professionals know that they're out there. So I think, you know, the likes of me with that knowledge have that responsibility to share that information, which I have done, and you know, ensured that certainly adult social care teams in Highland have an understanding that they're available, and also that that Ray, as the link for Scotland, will do training with Pacific teams and offer her advice and information. And I think we've had 2 or 3 adult social care teams that have linked in that way, and that has been really, really useful. I think the one thing that they've given me is space to think about my caring role, and space in a busy world where I'm trying to juggle work and caring. So just taking that time out to actually listen and be heard.
So thank you to Jennifer for that really great film. Okay, so we're going to take a little short kind of refreshment comfort break at the moment for you. So this is just an opportunity for you to stretch your legs, get a tea or coffee, or just have a little break from the screen for around about 10 minutes. So if I'm just looking at the time just now, if we come back just around about kind of 2:05, and we'll be going straight into our panel session when we come back from our break. And today I'm delighted to say that we actually have Jennifer here today, who was in the film you've just seen. We've also got Ray and Louise, who were in our staff film. We've also got Sarah, who is the social work student that Jennifer was talking about in her film as well, is here today. And we've also got one of our carer members, Anne, as well. So all of those lovely people will be on our panel session when we come back from the break. So if you can have a little think over the break about if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask them about anything you've seen in any of their films, or if there's just any kind of questions in general you want to ask about Tide and what we've done over the last 4 years and some of the learning which you might want to take back to your own roles, then that would be really great if you can either just pop them in the chat box over the break time or wait till we come back and just pop them in there. So if everyone just takes a little break just now, and I'll see you back here about 2:05, that would be great. Thank you. Hello, hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to the second half of this afternoon, and we're going to move into our panel session. So I'd just like to ask all of our panel members if you can pop on your cameras so that we can see you all. Okay. And so, as I said before the break, we have a really great panel here today. We have Jennifer from NHS Ireland, who just appeared in the last film before the break, along with Sarah, who is our social work student that she mentioned in the film. We've got Anne, who is one of our Tide carer members, and we have Louise and Ray, who are 2 of our carer involvement leads. So if you've got any questions to put to the panel, can you please just pop them in the chat box just now, and I can direct them to our panel. And whilst we're waiting for people to do that, I thought I would just kick off today's session by bringing in Sarah, who is Jennifer's social work student, who unfortunately couldn't appear in the film the day that we filmed with Jennifer, but I just wanted to get Sarah's take on how everything came about with Jennifer and linking in with Tide. So Sarah, can you tell us a bit about what led Jennifer to linking you in with Tide in the first place?
Hello everybody. Yes, as part of my placement here as a student social worker, I have a supervision session with my practice educator once a week, and that is Jennifer. I had a quick look at my notes there, and Jennifer first mentioned to me about Tide at the beginning of April of this year. And I think I had just scribbled it as a note, Tide, and it was in direct relation to a discussion we had with regards to the caseload I had. At that time, I think I just had the one person who had a diagnosis of dementia. That has since changed, but that was the connection that Jennifer initially made for me. She suggested Tide might be worth utilising as a resource And like I say, excuse me, I just scribbled it down as something to do a bit more research into and to have a look into. And I think at that time, Jennifer did specifically mention Ray's name. So I followed up with that at that time. So that was my first time. So it has been a few months now that I have been aware of Tide, and I have definitely taken advantage and utilised that as a resource.
Can you tell us a bit more about how it's actually helped you in your role that you're in just now, Sarah?
Yeah, of course. As a student social worker, a big part of my role is to do with assessment, and it's about looking at each person individually, and seeing if they have a need that I can provide, or if it is something else I can signpost them to. Whether it's something that NHS Highland progresses, or whether it's something they may feel able to progress themselves. So with regard to Tide, I think I made arrangements. It was first of all through email with Ray. And I think we suggested that I maybe catch up with her and chat. And I think it was from the first, and obviously it's virtual, it's all virtual at the minute. Yeah. So even from a very early stage, I appreciated what a useful resource this was going to be. Ray was so personable and so sharing and generous, not just with her time, but with the information that she had. And it was unique in that it wasn't just information she had accumulated. This is personal and lived information. And oddly enough, it was incredibly specific to the person and the family that I was working with. So it was invaluable. I don't know that I would have been able to access that intimate level of information anywhere else. She was just absolutely the right person to speak to about it. And I have knocked on her virtual door a number of times to ask about queries that I have, because I'm not familiar with this specific type of dementia. And like I say, it's not just knowledge that she's gathered, it's lived knowledge, so that she can share with me on a very personal level. And I then take that straight back to the unpaid carer that I'm working with, who has had some contact with Ray, but because of it, and you've mentioned it before in your films, the level of vulnerability, they are just getting by at the minute, and I don't know that they're ready to reach out with any great volume at the minute. So I'm kind of an intermediary, and I do hope that before too much longer, I'll be able to step out and that person will be able to connect one-to-one with Tide. And I do say, oh no, you should speak to Ray, she's really nice, you'll be absolutely fine. I think it's maybe spoken once, and even then it was so person-centred, because the unpaid carer they didn't feel that they had the time until about 8 o'clock at night. So, and Ray was like, yeah, that's fine. It's not a 9 to 5 service. It was just incredible. And I'm like, but, so I fed that back. No. Ray said that's okay. You can give her a call after 8 o'clock. So it was so kind and welcoming and useful and informative. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. And if I can just follow up with Jennifer, you mentioned a bit about it in your film, but why do you think, Jennifer, it's really important for professionals to engage with organisations like Tide? What can that bring to your work that you do?
So I think, as I'd alluded to, I think it's really important that that professionals have a kind of vast toolkit that they can go into and signpost appropriately. And I talked about as not all not having the knowledge and expertise and things. And actually, as Sarah has said, talking to Ray, that that knowledge is absolutely there, with the workers at Tide. And certainly from my own personal experience, finding that out when you join the CUP, it's not only the staff group that have the knowledge, it's the carers that come in as well. And I've learned, I've actually got quite a lot of kind of personal kind of knowledge that I've then gone off and thought about things as a result of a conversation at one of the, a previous coffee morning or so.
Yeah, That's great, thank you. Okay, we've had a question in from the audience, from Rachel, and so I think we can throw this open to Louise or Ray, and she's interested in hearing about different ways in which you get the word out to carers about Tide and who we are, and how do carers hear about us. So maybe if one of you want to chat about that, and then maybe I can bring Anne in and you can tell us about how you heard about us in the first place. So Ray or Louise, what kind of ways do you get the word out about Tide?
Because of the pandemic, it could have been quite difficult. But what we did was we researched other services and agencies in our respective areas and made contact from them. We introduced who Tide were, who they were, what we did, our mission and our visions. And that really led to doing presentations to other members of staff in these services, and the word got out from there. Social media played a big part as well, word of mouth. So yeah, a lot of groundwork, contacting services and really explaining who we were, what we were about and what we were trying to do to support and help carers. Louise?
Yeah, just to echo what Ray said, we were challenged again, obviously, during lockdown, everything being online. But again, our care involvement leads, we would look within our own areas, identify organisations within our geographical areas that we're working in, and making contact with them. And again, that might have been we weren't able to go along face to face and have those meetings, but we would join in on the organisation's team meeting, spreading the word to their team, and then they were passing that on to the referrals. And the outcome from that was that we were getting referrals from these organisations. The carers maybe would come along and join a coffee morning or join some of the other events, or come along to coffee morning and think, you know what, the coffee morning is not for me, but what is for me is maybe the former carers group. That ticks the box for what and meet my needs, meets and all of what my needs are. So therefore I think it was just, we had to be creative and how we were going to make the contact with other organisations. But yeah, I think it's proved really valuable. Again, putting that time and effort in, we've definitely reaped the benefits to be able to pass that on to our carers.
That's great, thanks. And Anne, you can tell us about your experience, how you heard about Tide and how you came into contact with us?
Yeah, I came kind of through, I've got a foot in a few different camps. I'm a former carer, I'm a current carer. I've worked in mental health industry as a charity fundraiser for them, and I've been volunteering for many over the years, currently with Alzheimer's Scotland, among others. And it was through Polly, who's one of their support workers, who I built a relationship with because she was very good when I was involved with my mum with Musical Minds. So at that point, that was over 4 years ago, and I don't think Tide was around at that point, so it's been actually quite good that I've kept that relationship going, not only in my volunteering role, but they also support me in other ways. So she suggested, I was struggling a little bit with one thing and another, and she suggested that I come to Tide, and I've just been scribbling down some notes as I've been listening to everything. It's been really, you can see yourself in so many of the different things, and Ray and Louise in particular, like everybody, it's all been virtual since I've got involved about 8-9 months ago, but you almost feel that you know the people, because, and I think it's like one of the vital things about Tide is that they only employ previous carers, and that speaks for itself, because only when you've walked a mile in someone's shoes can you fully understand and be able to work with them. But I came through Alzheimer's Scotland, but I think I've kind of been feeding back to Alzheimer's Scotland on how things are going and how empowered you guys have made me feel. And I think they could probably get more involved, just touching base with them. So I don't know if that's something you can do to kind of, it's difficult in the virtual world just now, but it might be something in the future to kind of try and put more TED schools out to kind of get the word out to as many people, because I can't thank you enough. It's been so good. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been really difficult. Sometimes it is, and I suppose that's one of the challenges when we first started 4 years ago, when we weren't in Scotland at all is that you're trying to then become part of and cover a full country. And Scotland's a very large country and is very diverse in its nature. So I think for me, what I would say has been the benefit of the pandemic is having that ability for us to pivot very quickly to have an online delivery of our kind of events and our activities, because what that did was it offered us that opportunity to reach more carers than we did before. And also we've had some feedback from some of our carers, and in particularly the male carers group. They've said to us that if we'd been running something face to face, they wouldn't have come along to that. So they've only really benefited from it when it has been online. So hopefully whenever we do get some level of face to face and start to bring that back, that we would continue with a kind of hybrid model so that we can offer that. As I said earlier on, it's that the key part is having that choice for people so they can choose what they want to do. And the other area, Rachel, that's been really helpful is Facebook as well. So we've got a closed Facebook group that we started at the beginning of the kind of pandemic, and it's up to over 400 people are on that group now as well. So again, if people don't really enjoy this kind of format of meeting and connecting, then and they really like Facebook and use that, we found that's a really great community that's built up within there. So there's different ways to kind of like get the word out there, and people are sharing it through Facebook connections as well, and Twitter. So there's just lots of different ways that we've tried it, but it's always going to be an ongoing challenge to get, if there's new staff that come in on new projects that open up, it's just about continually putting it out there that we're there. And again, it sometimes can come from other carers who maybe go into, like Anne says, they might be wearing a few different hats, or like Jennifer, they might be in a professional capacity. We just rely on that as well, people passing that on through word of mouth. If anyone's got any other questions, if you can just pop them in the chat box before, we've just got another couple of minutes before we come to the end of this one. So if you want to do that. But I suppose I would just like to come back maybe to yourself, Anne, just to ask you about, we've obviously heard about from both our staff members and also from Jennifer as well, how important it is. And I think this is one of the things that we really wanted to stress about our learning, that when you're starting to involve carers, how important it is to put in that time and that support when people are being very vulnerable. And I just wanted to find out what your thoughts were about that, about making sure that you get that kind of level of support.
Yeah, as I say, I've been kind of trying to look over my story in the last few days and think about everything, and it's been one of these things I kind of came into. Lockdown was really awful for me. I'm very COVID aware and very nervous about the whole thing, and the bigger picture was that I was kind of putting off the last stages of grief, which I'd been kind of hiding and just getting on with life and pretending wasn't happening. But speaking to Louise and Ray I almost feel like a member of staff. It's really quite strange because everyone shares so much that you just feel supported, as in there's no definition, there's no them and us. And I feel that that's really important as well, because when you're a carer coming into it, I'm quite an outgoing person, but there's not always people as outgoing as myself. And if you're quite shy and apprehensive, but your team has always got their own knowledge and they've also got training, and it's amazing to just get that feedback from them that makes you feel that no matter what you say, it's not wrong, and there is no wrong. But sometimes you feel in your heart when you've been a carer or current carer or former carer that you don't feel as supported by all the support groups that you think you would be. But coming to speak to someone who's been there and done that has made such a difference, and I can't thank the team enough. You've been so wonderful, and I'd like to get more involved in the future with everything.
That's great, thank you for that. So has anyone in the panel got anything else they would like to say before we come to the end of the panel session? Any other thoughts or things you would like to say before we finish? No? Okay. Yeah, Jennifer, were you going to say something? Yeah. No, okay, that's fine. No, that's great. Well, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for taking part, whether that's been helping us to do filming or coming along today and being part of this, because I know sometimes it can be nerve-wracking being on an event like this, and I really appreciate you all coming along and being so, again, open and honest about your experiences and what's happened for you. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that everyone who's watching appreciates that too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, So we're now coming towards the end of our session, and what I wanted to do now is to officially launch with you all our external evaluation. So I've mentioned it a few times now, and we did that external evaluation with our evaluation partner, who was University of the West of Scotland, and they helped us to do that over the last few years. And basically it's gone back and looked over Tide in Scotland over the last 4 years, everything that we've achieved. It features some case studies, one of them being Alison, that we saw her animation at the beginning, along with a few other people who have been with the network over the last couple of years. So we've just popped the link there in the chat box to the evaluation report. So if you follow that link, you'll be able to download that from our website. And again, it's got lots of information and lots of evaluation about all aspects of the work that we've done in Scotland, and lots of examples of areas where our carer members have been able to influence in some of the changes that they've made, both at local level and at national level as well. And we're really very proud of everything that our carers have achieved in Scotland over the last 4 years. And again, really showcases what they can do when they're given a safe space to begin with, and then given platforms in which to use their voice, talk about their experiences, and really make that key change. And we really appreciate the Life Changes Trust giving us that funding over the last 4 years to be able to do that and really establish Tide in Scotland, and we hope to continue to build on that in future years. So you'll be able to download that report from the website following that link there. And if there's anyone who's got any further questions or queries or anything that you think about in the next couple of days that you would like to chat to us about, or if you're interested in us either coming along to do some presentations to your organisations, or if you've got some carers that you want us to speak to, or if you want to refer some carers into us, then absolutely you'll be able to contact me. My email address is there as well, amanda@tidecarers.org.uk. If you pop me an email with anything at all, I'll be happy to help you out and direct you to either some of our staff members, or I'll be able to helpfully answer that query for you. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming along today. I hope that it's been informative, that we've been able to share our learning that we've had as a team over the last 4 years, and also give you a chance to meet some of our carers and see what we've been able to do with them. And I just wanted to also add that we have another event tomorrow, which is the last of our kind of learning events, and that will be a celebration of Tide over the last 4 years in Scotland. And if you would like to attend that, there are still opportunities to get tickets on Eventbrite. If you go onto the events page on our website, you'll be able to get tickets for that tomorrow, and that's going to be featuring a lot more of our carers. We've got more films that carers have done, and we've got more carers coming along tomorrow to talk about what they've achieved with Tide in the last 4 years in Scotland. So if you've not already got a ticket for that, it would be really great if you'd come along tomorrow. It's exactly the same time as today, so it's 1 o'clock to 2:30. So if you pop onto our website and click on the events button, you'll be able to get all the information for it there. So thank you very much, and thank you again to all of our panellists, and also thank you to Gordon in the background, who's been helping me on tech to make everything go smoothly. I really appreciate all his support, and thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.